Hello to everyone who intend to listen this lecture. My name is Sasa Pisot and I come from the Institute for Kinesiology Research in Science and Research Center from Koper, Slovenia, where I work as a research fellow and assistant professor in the field of sociology of sport. Before I start, I would really like to thank the organizer. It's really great honor for me to invite me on this international conference, being here as an invited speaker. So I hope you will enjoy the lecture with the title Chasing World Records: the impact of high technology and innovation in sports on some social categories. Uh, as preparing this lecture, I was under the impression of recent Tokyo Olympics, and watching today's sports and athletes, I could not escape from this ancient picture of naked athletes competing in ancient Olympia for eternal fame and umbrage. But be honest, today most athletes run, jump, or swim not only for fame but also for the money. And after all, gold medal is the tickets to lucrative advertising contracts, and this bring a lot of money. Um, but to achieve that, athletes are willing not just to train hard, giving up normal life, but also push and test the limits of their body, and with the legal and even illegal help of high technology and sports innovation to break the records. So the main points of this presentation will refer to world record-breaking phenomena, where the main factors related to unlimited border of breaking records will be presented, and the influence of high technology and innovation on some social categories mostly exposed in the frame of critical theory. That's mean deviant behavior and health issues, and inequity and equal opportunities in sport. In the conclusion, probably will open additional question to dilemmas of the role of sociologists in a way to educate athletes and sports and public sphere about the negative and also positive outcomes of high tech and innovation in sports. Chasing the world records are broken over and over again. That's the fact. Last Olympics in Tokyo, 2020, with a year of delay and despite the extreme circumstances, with extreme heat, humidity, and smog, another 26 records were broken. So based on this research, 2005 and 2007 world records over time follow kind of S-shaped curve and made a huge jump in the middle of the 20th century. We assume that because of scientific improvements in training, coaching, and nutrition, as well as social factors and the globalization of sports, actually in all sports. Since then, the rate of records breaking has a little slowed down, but still exists. Let's see, along 26 of them in Tokyo, in Rio, 2016, 27 records were broken. In London, 2012, 32 records, and in Beijing, 2008, 34 records. So this fact could lead to the speculation about the impact of the new technology to this constant world record broken. But but the news that two sprinters have been banned from the Olympics after failed doping tests, uh, that's uh, uh, that's the news that came and raised some new questions. So how far athletes are ready to go, and will this chasing for records uh, will bring using and abusing of technology and innovation in sports. Within research of recent findings, Tokyo Olympics data and additional secondary literature in sociology of sports actually will indicate the factors which help us explain all the reason for the persistence of the world record rate. Actually, according to the Carl Foster, the professor emeritus of the University of Wisconsin, most factors to determine how many world records will be broken again and again are actually the increased pool of athletes caused by normally geographic expansion, because more countries gain access to Olympics competition. Additionally, new rules of professionalism. After the decades of strict amateur codes, by 1992 the Olympics allowed professional athletes to compete, and that caused more grants assessed to the athletes from poorer countries. Then longer athletes' careers, because financial accessibility combined with improvements in sports medicine makes long-term training more sustainable, and athletes could be longer into the track. And for the last factor, it goes to technological advances in sport innovation. Just assuming that just artificial snow and ice allow us year-round training. A lot of innovation in swimming pools as anti-wave technology of lane ropes, and constant temperature, and which enable athletes to perform optimal. Uh, and for the last Tokyo Olympics, technology was the shock absorbing rubber technology track. So it could give athletes a performance advantage about to 1 to 2%. So all those factors. So so when it comes to securing a win and breaking world records, every technological trick is used to gain milliseconds. Every little advantage counts. So it's not just about, let's say, designing faster equipment, suits, etc., but also about improving the physical abilities of athletes through the use of the latest medical and biological research regarding the nutrition and supplements. But unfortunately, in race to be the best, the abuse of biomedical research by athletes and their coaches to gain an unfair advantage are really common. So this kind of deviant behavior uh, are resulted that our athletes are willing to train hard, testing the limit of performance and take the shortcuts through doping. That's the truth. Um, for decades, professional sports has been trained by doping and illegal substances. That tainted by doping and the illegal substances. That's the facts, because they are willing to use uh, illegal substances such as erythropoietin, steroids, or growth hormones, and many others that were originally actually developed to treat human diseases, but have also been used to boost the performance of healthy athletes. I don't know if you know that fact, but it was really surprisingly when I came to the facts. Uh, that substances that help increase performance exist among almost as long as competitive sports. That's the facts. Caffeine, cocaine, and alcohol were among the athletes in the 19th century really popular stimulants. Then strychnine. I know it as a pesticide, particularly for killing mice and rodents, uh, were uh, were used 1904, almost 120 years ago, by Thomas Hick, who ran victorious marathon. Uh, I found it before and during the race he receives an injection of strychnine. And in 1960, cyclist Kurt Enemark Jensen died. He was kind of first victim of illegal substances because an autopsy shows amphetamine use. So aware of this scientific evidence and harmful effects of doping on health because they because they could die, and the risk of competing when injured. A lot of evidence we can we have a lot of evidence about that, and risky training regimes to push beyond the human limits. All those mentioned are definitely issues that should not be ignored when considering the health of the athletes. The second is exclusion in sport. So I would like to focus on disability in sport and not on the traditional factors of exclusion as gender and race. So despite Paralympics Games movement enable to disabled athletes be included in sport, still in the world of high innovation puts under the question whether or not some prosthesis, prosthetic limbs give disabled athletes an unfair advantages over competition with biological limbs. So that could be discussed in the case of Oscar Pistorius at London 2020 Olympic. I don't know if you know on the picture here you can see his blade prosthesis. He is a South African athlete pushed onto the scene at the 2004 Summer Paralympics Games and set the world records to 200 meters and dominated then in 100 meters and 200-meter competition in 2008 and 2012 Paralympics. And he applied to IAF to run in Olympics 2008, but he was banned. But in April 2010, researchers provide convincing counter-arguments that the ban was overturned because Pistorius became the first amputee to compete in the race of 2012 Olympics in London. He raced in 400 meter and in the relay of 400 meters for the South Africa. Actually, on the contrary, amputee jumper Marcus Regan in 2014 preparing for the 2015 Rio de Janeiro Olympics, he was not allowed because the test found that it offers a significant advantage for the jumper because enable better takeoff in the jump. So this kind of put us in the question uh, where's the limit between the prosthesis, between the disabled, and where's the limit in the innovations and high-tech industry. And there's another category, inequity in equal opportunity in sport, I would like to focus, because despite geographical expansion in globalization, as I mentioned in sport, in terms of number of Olympic athletes per capita, there are still many, more or less third world countries currently struggling under the weight of sport participation. Let's say in India, for India, it's 125 athletes for 1.4 billion people. Also in Indonesia, 28 athletes participating in Olympics. And not to mention 26 million North Koreans who do not have access to the games. So these inequities exist, and not to mention also in the sport facilities, school sports, grassroots sports are under the question when we speak about equal development and accessibility to sport. And additionally, for example, in Beijing, only after swimmers who wearing a Speedo LCR racer suit designed by NASA won 94% of all races, 98% of all medals, and broke 23 world records. Just after then, the suit was banned for the competition. So that's the question that the sports governing bodies in the Olympics or at the World Championships should always look at the technical innovation and decide that any new gear or accessories has to be kind of reasonably available to everyone, as we see in which is in practice it's not always the same and fair for all. So that was three main social categories I would like to stress in relation to innovation and high technology in sports. But to conclude, actually, the described record-breaking phenomena in social categories affected by technological innovation in sport definitely need to draw more attention to the multidimensional research of actually all those consequences, in particular to those that are harmful for the athlete's well-being. So being aware, there is no doubt that the greed of money, because money makes world go around, will not stop technological development, and therefore it's really necessary to educate athletes, to raise awareness in sports and public sphere about what lies behind those medals and records. Uh, because in the opposite, we will continue with prevailing mindset or of celebrating technological advances and surgeries on bodies just to maximum performance. And along that, we're gonna forget to the prime nature of the sports and Olympics, which is to celebrate the human will to overcome the obstacles. So that was all for me from my side. Thank you for attention.